Hello, this is Global Mission of Peace, Mystic View, and I am Radagast, and I am here with Shelley. Hi, Shelley.
Hello, everyone.
And this is Mystic View number 44, and we're just going to talk about plasma and plasma beings. So, plasma often, I know I even got into it, just a philosophical discussion when I had mentioned about how I use plasma and how he used plasma, and he studied some physics. So his retort to me about my plasma was he was identifying plasma basically as the normal kind of hot stuff we think of, balls of plasma like ball lightning or things like that. And apparently he has a more traditional thought of that there's different forms of plasma, and one of them is a cooler plasma. And
Terrified.
yes, and just how apparently even when they did Victor Schauberger's zero point water, just as it reaches a 0 point, water gets to about 32 degrees, where it kind of changes state. So that kind of implies not like this super, vacuum of space kind of cold, but definitely a coolness to this particular more localized non-hot plasma.
Right. So it's an ionized gas, but what gas are we ionizing, I guess? And the cloud of charge.
But it's just like how I feel that, like, what inspired me to even go toward this, and I think we'll broaden out the topic, but I figured why not go into the inspiration, which was observing a lot of different types of UFOs. I remember getting a really good close-up of a very involved, we go, oh boy, it looks like, you think of some kind of real major starship, and somebody had gotten it close enough that somebody was able to check the serial number and was property of the United States Navy. And this was something that could phase in and out. This was capable of cloaking and decloaking.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm getting to, it seems to me that especially the more, especially the real, very sci-fi looking stuff, I think is mostly ours. And,
I agree.
And that, and we all, it seems to me, generally speaking, although I know there are people who feel that there are triangular, non-terrestrial types of anti-gravity vehicles. I still wonder. There's just there seems to be a certain almost like addiction to shape in the Air Force and those people, and that triangle I think kind of fits with how they would envision one of our interstellar craft.
I think there's a little lack of sophistication when it comes to those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And there's no way that we can really determine, I think, by feeling or by observation. I think that it's quite a bit more comprehensive as far as what the crafts actually are. And so if we're talking plasma, then we're saying the craft are actually alive, that they actually have a consciousness.
Yes.
If we're referring to a plasma craft.
Yes, and I think when we see these plasma craft, at that point, at least the outer part of them would be what we would perceive as a hot plasma.
Hot plasma?
Well, like what we would normally think of, almost like something equivalent, like to ball lightning or something.
Right.
But I'm talking about the out. I think that's the outer, like the membrane of it, and it's part of how it transitions into something that has some kind of presence in our visual, at least our visual range.
Yeah, possibly, but I wouldn't want to limit it to that. Why I'm saying that is I remember having the experience with the Therify, and that was definitely a plasma being I was experiencing.
Yes. Well,
that was very good.
So much of the non-corporeal consciousness does seem to take place in what I would consider plasmic fields and plasmic presence.
Well, I mean, we could look at it as over 99%, right? I mean, and that's the space that has us so mystified, we could say.
Well, I think what it was apparently this person I was speaking to wasn't equivocating or making the equivalent comparison of dark matter to
Mm-hmm.
a plasmic state.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, I see it as kind of like a fluidium of sorts, a combination of a substance and currents within that substance,
Right.
almost like water and then currents within that water.
Mm-hmm.
And where you actually have plasmic jets of different composition going through a lesser plasmic medium.
Right. Right. So, how does that pertain to orbs? Are orbs plasma?
Hmm. The different things and the behaviors of plasma I don't necessarily see in an orb. An orb seems to they don't I'm not picking up the same kind of inner aliveness that plasma has.
Ah. Hmm. I really feel an intelligence about them, though.
I'm not denying that I feel an intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
There's some unique properties. I mean, it's really hard for us to begin to define that, but really, just to bring it to people's attention and let's get the wheels turning and start becoming a bit more discerning in our awareness, because really the focus of our attention, I think, contributes to the plasma one way, or the plasma being one way or the other. So are we creating this like a participation in the noosphere? Are they independently visiting us as an intelligence? That sounds a lot more fun in my world than.
yes, well, that's how I do. I do feel that in many ways, they're even when we don't see them visually. If it was nighttime, we had infrared glasses, we could probably see them.
Sure. So we're going to think of them kind of like ghosts, or like the physics of spirit, that cloud of charge that doesn't require a body to have transportation, much less life.
Yes, I feel there's a lot of activity. As a matter of fact, I remember during certain psychedelic experiences seeing how full it was. It was almost like being in the middle of a school of fish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and it would, I mean, it's like almost like thick with intelligence,
I would agree
and
entirely.
intelligence that tends to at least enjoy itself in different forms for
Self-aware,
time,
self-referring.
for a time. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes for your own, sometimes it seems like almost for your own curiosity, enjoyment, introspection.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. So something to look into for people that investigate reincarnation, for example, or the past. Everyone's had loved ones pass. It's the same topic. It's the same concept.
It's really interesting. As I kind of was looking at some of the energy that's let's say occurring in Washington, D.C. right now, I kind of saw it all as these different spirals, almost, let's call it a bunch of tornadoes.
Oh yeah, that's really a
And they were different
great.
sizes and they were different
Mm-hmm.
colors.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a real, a coherence trying to form, and other kind of antagonistic
Oh
uh,
yes.
vortexes. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a very interesting way of interpreting the energy, like from like, but I'm not going to call it a remote viewing, but, you know, an attempt to get information in something similar to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's focused human attention is what you're doing, right? That's creating like a centripetal conjugate, what would Dan Winter call it? A phase conjugate dielectric of self-direction or self-referral.
Well, I guess so, because I mean, but the funny thing was how everything was revealed to me as a vortex
Right.
of size, intensity, and almost like what was blowing around in it. Was it just sand, or was it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
nastiness or whatever?
Mm-hmm. Well, so I guess all that defines then is that it's definitely life, because that's.
Oh yeah, but I mean, this real, you could feel this real competition for what will be the dominant coherence.
Oh.
Pretty big stuff. Very, very, very. I mean, it's on. It is on.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, even the last time, getting back to our subject of plasma beings, the last time I saw something in the sky, about 2 months ago or so, excuse me, it was an out of nowhere kind of reddish orb that kind of grew into intensity, then grew out of intensity and was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it just really, I felt, was saying hello.
Mm-hmm.
That was really the communication I got. I do seem to be able to get impressions from different groupings that are quite different in opinion.
Well, that would be wonderful. That would be many different entities visiting.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's
Well,
in.
we are, because of who we are, who we are in the whole Gaian experiment, and the potential that we hold. We're really special, and even those of us who are still not aware of how special we are, there's still all that potential waiting to happen.
Mm-hmm. So when we're all caught up we could look at it from that perspective, that our little petty kind of worries day to day, when we can have the perspective of the larger picture, if we can imagine what that's like, I think it helps to bring some perspective.
Yeah.
For starters, you know, that maybe we can relax and kick back and actually enjoy this life a bit more, and think a bit beyond the next football game or the next paycheck, perhaps.
Well, I feel, if one could speak of a divine plan, the enjoying this planet is the part that's, at least currently, has not been fulfilled, at least in memorable history.
Well, I like that we're moving into bliss, because bliss, I think, is the fastest way to our healing, individually and collectively, for the planet. And plasma pertains strongly to that experience, you know, to how your body responds to the bliss.
Do you want? I know you. Well, I know you involve yourself a lot in bliss. I don't know if you want to speak about that at all.
Oh my gosh, there's so many forms of bliss. There's so many ways to achieve bliss. It could just be that simple aha moment, right? But if you can capture it and kind of dive into it, it's like suspending time. So there's just so many ways to experience bliss that strengthen your ability to experience the all that is, or the oneness. So Therify is definitely one of those options.
Yeah.
But so is sound, so is, so is fragrance. There's many paths to bliss.
And playing in 432 is one of them. Especially when
Yes.
you have a bunch of people doing it. I experienced that on New Year's Eve when I went out to listen to some people play, and I played a little bit also. And it was all tuned to 432, and it had a noticeable effect on the consciousness. I saw it really was special, and I feel it's a great way to use music to prepare people for interaction with each other. You know, if you have gatherings, playing in that tuning, to me, almost tunes people up, and it makes them more susceptible to sharing.
And that's really what it is. But that sharing is holding a pure intention, right? And again, it comes back to our focus, to our attention on pure intention is what makes it shareable. So that brings us to something as wonderful as the Schumann frequency, and how just even in the last few days, it has seriously spiked. It's gone from our normal, whatever it was, 7.83 or something.
Right.
And it spiked like up to the 16 plus sort of thing.
Well,
so,
I saw one reading as high as 36.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, but what I thought was interesting is because 7.83 adds up to 9, and so does 36.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
And 432 is based on that recurring 9.
And I would like to think that we can return to those frequencies that support life, instead of that slight nudge away that leads us more chaotic.
Yes.
Right. So returning to all those things. So we could do, I mean, even just spinning. That's the fractal expression of what we're talking about anyway. But that's why the Sufi, no, I'm not going to claim that's why the Sufis spin, but the Sufis have certainly discovered their way to oneness and bliss through spinning. But we have so many things. Look at crystals and fragrance and all the water therapies.
Yeah.
Water, oh my gosh, and breath, right? Just, or doing the labyrinth work. There's yoga. How could I not mention yoga? There are many paths to bliss, and many paths to exploring and communicating with plasma.
Yeah.
And calling them in even. I mean, that's...
Well, and that, I find it's most easy to work with them when you bring yourself into your own coherence, where your spin is stabilized, and you just kind of I don't know, have that awareness of yourself. And I mean, it probably doesn't hurt to even think of yourself as a vortex, to, I don't know, attract others.
I agree, and I think that's really important that you mentioned it, because that amplifies the coherence. Mm-hmm. It's like a snowball effect going the right direction.
And always remember that it's all about centripetal. It's all about that
compression,
pulling in of surrounding, energy and into your own, and creating your own core from the ambient chi.
Mm-hmm. And then we're not limited to something as whatever common as the speed of light. That's not a restriction.
And of course, there's always enough chi to go around. It's not like, that was so many of us spitting, we're running low. No. The supply doesn't run out.
No, I think we're making more.
I believe so too. So apparently, I forget what the reading was, but it was some kind of astronomical thing of whether they thought the universe was contracting and expanding and whatever. But whatever it is they thought it was, all of a sudden it seems to be doing something different. And I think that ties into what's going on Earth, because again, I think we hold the most impactful resonance in all the bands of the Milky Way galaxy.
Well, that brings us back to our star family, and just reaching out, even just exploring and asking for communication. And if nothing else, you get to know a little bit more about who you are. You get to push past those boundaries that restricted you from accepting that this three-dimensional expression is all we've got.
And also, whatever outside cultural distortions might have been made. Because there's a who can kind of communicate with you has something to do with I don't know what you can receive based on what your makeup is. I guess I don't know.
Well, it's a receptor and there has to be a match. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need to be able to, there needs to be an uptake of the information, right? And so with the magnetic field weakening, I think that it's suggesting at least the return of full consciousness. It's suggesting an activity with the hippocampus, which is our organ of memory. And this Schumann frequency has everything to do with the magnetic field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it's enabling us. It's an invitation. It's kind of like, hey, hello, here we are. It's an invitation to come, play, explore. Come join us. Expand your awareness.
Yes.
Even just by asking the question, okay, is that possible? Even just asking the question, is that possible or am I crazy? You know, that is a little crack that lets some more light in.
So do you share my observation that certain UFO type things would most likely be plasma type things with a shimmering membrane that gives them sometimes a metallic appearance, especially the more just spherical type or ovoid?
I think that's definitely a possibility, but of course I wouldn't exclusively limit to that, because not only do we have those type of beings visiting us, but we have beings, if I could call them that are without material body, you know, without matter.
Right.
They're not the standing wave. They're not that cloud charge, that moving field.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's so many possibilities, and I've had the experience of having communication with so many varied experiences. I guess I have to leave it at that, because otherwise I'm going to be calling upon all kinds of analogies and metaphors that perhaps are better felt than tried. You know, it's not so much understanding it intellectually as it is the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
If you're open to just receiving the feeling, it's like, I don't know, sticking your toes in the water. Is it cold? Is it warm? It's an experience, and then you decide, do I want to explore more of this? Do I want to experience more of this? And, you know, there's nothing going to be forced on anybody. But there's sure a lot of family that would love for people to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Open their hearts and, you know,
Yeah.
hey, remember, try to remember. And I think that's the big thing, is that it is affecting the memory. And I believe that is our little portal back to full consciousness.
Yeah, and I think, so, you know, the Mandela effect might be just one of the effects of that.
Yeah, well, possibly. I mean, there's divine order, so I can't just toss that out with CERN and go, yeah. No,
Yeah. No, actually, I was thinking that is the divine order creating the Mandela effect.
Okay, right.
Yeah. No, divine order always.
Definitely. Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of shenanigans go on with our divine order.
Yeah.
That we could certainly stand to be accountable and clean up.
Yes. And as conduits of that into this world, is certainly something we should all be attending to at all times, to make sure that that energy gets here and in the form as best as intended as possible. Obviously, you know, we always get to flavor it, but you know,
Well,
make sure it's a good flavor.
and I think it's time. I think that this is the time on our planet right now. We talk about sacred texts, every single, and all the cultures across our planet. Every single one of them refer to their savior returning on a white horse, and the white horse is the hippocampus, and that's the organ of memory. And even the therapy, even the plasma being that I experienced was in the shape of the seahorse, and that is what draws my attention back to the hippocampus every time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see how that is self-referring. It turns inside out without any sense of separation. And so that's what draws us to being able to grasp the fuller truth that there actually is no separation. It's only our perceptions that have limited us, and that really that love and light has always been around us.
Mm-hmm.
And we can just open our hearts to it.
Well, I think that's a beautiful way to conclude the show.
All right. Well, this is fun.
Yeah. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for Mystic View number 44. And we'll see you next episode. And if you like, please thumbs up and subscribe.
Yeah. That's okay. Good night, everyone.